wanted to say that I'm so happy to be here with the two people that I love most, who I feel most loved by in all the world.
A body was found early this morning that we have reason to believe is your wife's.
I've done things
You may have been the last person to talk to your friend.
you'll never know.
Can you tell us anything that you remember from last night?
Three best friends, one mysterious death, and an investigation that begins to unravel not just what happened, but who these women really are. That's the gripping premise behind Imperfect Women on Apple TV, an 8-episode psychological drama executive produced and starring Kerry Washington and Elizabeth Moss. And at the center of the investigation is a commanding presence, Detective Bethany Ganz, played by the incredibly talented Ana Ortiz. Now, I know I've seen her, and I'm sure you've seen her in several iconic TV roles like Marisol Suarez in Devious Maids, and in another Suarez role, Hilda Suarez, in the hit ABC TV series Ugly Betty. And we're going to catch up a little bit with her because we are thrilled to have Ana with us today. And welcome, Ana, to Hollywood Talks.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
I am excited with the series. I really got into it, and I just know. First of all, let's start with Imperfect Women. Is based on a book by Arminta Hall. So, what was your first reaction when you read the book and then read the script for Imperfect Women?
Well, I read the book so many months ago before I even knew it was a project. And I remember when I was reading it thinking this would be such a good TV series, as I think, people do nowadays when you're reading a really juicy book. And then when I got the audition for the series, I was so excited. And I was so excited to be, just when I got cast to be part of a production that had so many exciting women sort of behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera as well as behind. So it just from top to bottom was just an incredible experience.
It kind of does feel a little different when you have all these creatives and women. It's like a sisterhood, that you all kind of understand the little nuances of what happens with women and men and power trips and all of that. So I get all that. I was really really into the whole series right from the very first episode where you come on, and I just got the sense like this detective, she knows a lot more than she's letting on. Is there any truth to that, or is that was just your detective swagger?
I think a little bit of both, actually. I think as a detective, at least the way I played this character was that she was always going to act as if she knew everything. I think that's just part of it to unnerve the suspects or to unnerve the people that you're questioning, to make them think like, oh, what does she know? But then, I think she wants to present as though she already has the answers. So there was definitely that was an element to it, but I think she's, figuring it out as she goes along, but she definitely doesn't trust anyone.
But that kind of like as a thing, like you're trying to keep them guessing so that they could tell more.
Yeah, now that you say that, I think that is. I think it's definitely about sort of, keeping them on their toes and being like, oh, well, you said this, so, or like but I, like for this scene with Mary and her husband Howard, of like, oh, so you said you got home, but the bartender said you were, so I think she's always trying to keep people off balance and, not show her cards too much, but definitely just make sure that everybody is is a little trepidatious and always sort of a little bit worried about what I know.
And then maybe they might slip and say something, right?
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
So the series does explore a lot of complexities between female friendships. And I mean, we can go from one gamut to the other because there's so many dynamics. And I know that we've all been in a group of women. And sometimes, most of the time, we're cool and we're all helpful. But then there's sometimes where there are some women with ulterior motives, or
Yeah.
like in this series, they each have something that they're working through. So, what stood out to you most about the theme of women relationships and how these women carry out their friendship?
I think what stood out to me the most, that's such a good question. I think what stood out to me the most was basically how complicated our relationships are with our women friends, but how important they are and how like deeply rooted they are, and how when push comes to shove, those are the relationships that matter the most to you. Those are your ride or dies. And I feel like I love that that was the message. At least that was what I took away from it.
Mhm.
Is because at least in my life, my female friendships are so important to me and they run so deep. And we argue and we fight, but I'll tell you what, if somebody called me and, needed a cover up, like I'd be like, tell me when and where. And so I feel like I love that this show represented that, like how deep female friendships go, and I want to see more of that I feel like we have to know that that is what it is. Like we're not alone out here. Like this is how women can relate to each other. We're complicated and messy and all the things, but it's still like this beautiful deep love.
Right. And this is what the friends have. Yes, they have these secrets and all that. But there's such a difference between being in a group of women that are catty, and yes, those exist.
Of
But this
course.
is beyond that. They can forgive, or they can, still love each other, even though there's some, we won't give anything away, but there's a lot to give away. I really loved the series, and I was so intrigued, and I cannot wait to see the finale. Which I know you can't talk about because that's coming up. I know that. So I'm not going to ask you that. But what do you hope that audiences take away from Imperfect Women?
I hope that they take away that, you know, female driven shows are as exciting and cool and, you know, uh, um, intriguing and captivating as anything else. I mean, for me, that's the content I want to watch. So I'm so thankful that audiences have been responding so well to it. And I hope that, that the powers that be understand that like female friendships and all the complications that come along with it are really interesting. And there's so much there to mine and there's funny, there's romantic, there's all the things. So for me, that's something that I would love for audiences to take away, that like those relationships are so interesting and there's so much there to dig into.
And you've played, like I mentioned, some iconic roles, which are light and fluffy and comedic. Um, and you've played a gamut of roles. What would you tell someone who's not into the acting world, but as an audience, how is it? How easy or not easy is it to go from doing your light roles to your more intense roles?
It's not easy, but that's part of the fun, I mean, nothing good is easy. I think honestly, I think comedy's a bit harder, but I think but it's a lot more fun, just the nature of it. But I think drama is it's sometimes it's more difficult to pull yourself out of, like when you're in it and it's really like dark and you're really having to go to those places. It can be difficult to pull out of those, whereas like with Ugly Betty, the comedy of it, we were all in it together and we were always laughing and always sort of like you know having such a good time. Not that I'm not having a good time in the drama, but it was just a different vibe. But I think people should know that those two things, where they do go hand in hand a lot of times, there is sort of that cliche of like you have to take a while to unwind from drama. When you're done shooting for the day, you definitely need to like,
Uh-huh.
a glass of wine and a soak.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so I have not read the book. I am going to read the book now because I'm
It's
intrigued,
so good.
but I don't know. Is there a second season? Because I haven't read the book. Is it open, or is this it? Just one season?
The book is so good. The book is very different. So that being said, there's always a way to keep the story going. But as far as this limited series goes, the book is definitely sort of covered in this show. But I think there's, maybe it's just me like wishful thinking, but I think there's always room to revisit characters. Why not?
Yeah, that's what I say. Why not? It's just that the women were interesting, so you
Yeah.
want to know about their lives a little bit more.
And it
But
was, and it was such a great show to shoot because it was just all women. It was so
yeah,
fun.
yeah. So congratulations! I can't wait to see the finale. I am going to be glued to the TV. It was a wonderful, wonderful ride, and I thank you so much for talking with us a bit about your role.
Oh, thank you for the time for talking to me. I really appreciate you. It's so nice to meet you.
Igualmente. Hasta luego.
Ciao.